How's it going, everyone? Sethphir here, and we are back once again with the guides. I know we took a little bit of a day or two break there to get out some subscriber and channel content info things and guild related messages, but we are finally back with some videos. And in today's topic, we are going to be going over territory priorities and kind of where and why you would want to take a certain territory over another, or where you may want to make your home base at. And first and foremost, we do want to do a shout out to Redbird on Discord and the guys at newworld-map.com and New World Fans for kind of giving us the okay to feature off some of their site things here. So if you haven't seen that, I would definitely recommend checking that out. There's a lot of great information, and that is the tool that we will be using today to kind of take a look at the whole map and what that means. All right, so we're going to go ahead and break this down into a few sections. In my opinion, there are early game territories, there are mid game territories, and there are late game territories. And we may want to keep in mind some further expansions in the future and how the map looks. And so we'll kind of dive into that. So first, we'll look at beginning game territories or starter territories, which would be Everfall here, as well as Windsward, Monarch's Bluff, and First Light down at the bottom. So I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point that Everfall and Windsward seem to be better than these other three towns, mainly due to their location. Windsward has a few things going for it, namely, it is next to this waypoint right here on the map, which is basically next to the Old Man in the River. The Old Man in the River is just a quest giver that you kind of have to keep coming back to for the main storyline. So that was what kind of makes that a little popular. The second thing would be the Amarine Excavation over here, which is the first real dungeon that you can get access to. It says recommended level 25, but 23 seems to be the go-to, as that is the first range in which you will be able to accept the repeatable quests from Barchamedes there, which we will go over into a much later video about leveling guide and how to exactly do all that stuff. So that's kind of Windsward, the reason why Windsward is very popular. Everfall is a good second choice because of its central location. It also has access to the Starstone Burrows dungeon, which is a 35 dungeon attainable through the quest line within the region of Everfall. You will get a tuning orb once you follow that down enough, and you will get access to the dungeon that way. The Amarine dungeon, just to double back, side note for that is it's required for the main storyline, whereas the dungeon in Everfall you skip. It actually doesn't do anything for the main storyline. So that makes Windsward, in my opinion, a better early game territory. But I think Everfall is also equal value, especially maybe even more value going into the late game. So right off the bat, I would rank these two very high, and it's hard to say which is a number one or number two between Windsward and Everfall. But either way you go, I think it's a solid choice. But I think the good definition there is Windsward, probably more early game. Everfall, more late game. When I say late game, I'm thinking a month down the line. Windsward is probably going to be more popular for the first month for sure. And on top of that, Windsward seems to be the go-to auction house town, just due to the nature of the main quest storyline being there, the first dungeon being there, and a place where a lot of starting players end up at. So yeah, do keep in mind that. The other things on the side here, it's kind of weird because First Light is very far positioned away from everything, and as you can see, it's stuck. Like there's water here, right? Like there's nowhere to go. So the only thing you can do is go up through Windsward. So that kind of makes it a little bit of a poor choice in terms of positioning. And same with Cutlass Keys. It's just kind of pitched in the like odd spot, like the southern part of the map, and it's kind of away from a lot of important things. There are some quest lines that require you to go through here for the main story quest, but it's not very long. There are a few resource nodes that are decent and mining paths along these routes, but nothing like too impressive in particular. And in my opinion, those would probably be like I don't know, maybe like third and fourth place right there. Monarch's Bluffs is okay. It's kind of in the same boat it does kind of connect to Ebonscale, but essentially if you were to just take Ebonscale, you would have more territory there. So as a starting town, it kind of doesn't do anything special that anything else does. Like Everfall also connects to Ebonscale, so like why would you just go for this one? And again, it's kind of just like stuck on that island standpoint on the shore, and nothing really connects too well to it. So that's like the positioning overlook of the towns, right? But then there's something else that you have to keep in mind, and this is probably something that a lot of people don't know about. So I'm going to go over to my other tab here, and if you take a look, this is patch notes from one of the alphas. It doesn't state this in any like current patch notes, but you will see it reflected in the game, and it was also reflected in the beta. And what we're looking at right here is this highlighted section. First Light reduces your fast travel weight cost from 5 Azoth per 10 weight to 1 per 10, which is actually quite big. So Azoth is a resource that's essentially used for crafters to make better gear, but it's also used to fast travel around. So essentially it saves you leveling time and just time in general. So it's a very, very precious commodity. And reducing that in any way, shape, or form is actually very good. So I think the strategy here with a lot of this will be making sure that your faction controls this. While maybe you don't want First Light per se, maybe another guild you own or an allies with may want First Light, right? Because everyone in your faction will get that bonus. Monarch's Bluffs will do something similar. It'll reduce like the distance costs, because the two factors for traveling with Azoth is weight and distance. So again, you can take a look at all of these details for yourself. You do see like Windsward is giving the volume of items gained by 5% for gathering. Everfall has taxes. Brightwood has trading taxes. Azoth travel by 50% for the controlling faction on the base for Cutlass keys. So the base cost is like there's a base cost plus the weight and the distance as well. So all these things are really nice. And when you get into some of these higher ones, like Morningdale for coin and XP rewards by 5% for the controlling faction for expeditions, that can be quite good going into the late game. But we'll talk about some of those factors later on. So I'll put a link in the description below to these patch notes. This is official Amazon. So you can go ahead and check that out for yourself and kind of look at all those bonuses. So that may sway you one way or another. They are small bonuses. Do keep that in mind. But they're pretty powerful nonetheless. So when we look at that, we want to kind of see this location, right? So we have this starting town area. Now we could talk about mid-range towns or mid-game towns, which would be Brightwood right here. Would also be Weaver's Fen, Restless Shore, and my personal favorite, Morningdale. And we'll go into some of those. So Brightwood is actually a great territory just due to its central kind of location here. As you can see, it's one of the few towns that connects to Great Cleave, which Great Cleave is not claimable. So Great Cleave, Eden's Grove, and Shattered Mountain, the only way to get to these is going to be to have your Hearthstone set at an inn, right? Or else you're going to be walking through there. And in that regard, I would highly recommend you setting your Hearthstone right here at this mountain home in Shattered Mountain, just so that you can get up to a lot of points. Mountain Rise is also pretty good. So it just kind of depends on which one you want to go for there. So back to Brightwood. There is a quest line here in the like upper region near this waypoint that will make you go there for the faction mission. So that is something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind would be that it does connect into Ebonscale as well. So that's a nice area to kind of go for. Weaver's Fen seems to be stuck in the middle of a lot of stuff. It's also swampy and the houses are a little bit looking, in my opinion. It's a decent place, but I don't think it does too much. Like, it does connect to Eden's Grove. but it's kind of just stuck over here in the corner. So I would rank this one a little bit lower in my opinion. And same with Restless Shore. Like it just connects to two other mid-game territories. It's also off in the corner. The only good bonus about Restless Shore is that it does have the level 45 dungeon called the Depths, which is required for the storyline, the main storyline. So that is decent at least. And then we'll get into like the last one here, which I think is arguably the best mid-game territory, if not the second best, next to Brightwood, which would be Morningdale. And the reason for this is some base things, which would be that the questing region in Morningdale is actually really good. There are a lot of quests here in a lot of areas that have high value XP. Like over here in this top zone, there's a place called Scorpius, which is like an elite farming zone where a lot of people have went to and grinded a lot of levels. There is also several rank 45 corrupted portals that appear on the map, which is another big bonus because that's going to be high level portals that you can grind out very quickly without having to, really struggle bus it up in Shattered Mountains with the 65 portals because they are quite hard. It also has a lot of natural resources like hemp and silkweave and things of that nature. So it's a really nice zone. It's also just beautiful aesthetically, to be honest. And there's like a nice little rain like weather thing that goes on there, and it's really awesome. So I definitely recommend checking that out. The other bonus of it is that it connects to Eden's Grove quite nicely, and it will serve as a way to get you to the main Eden Grove's like elites, and also to get you to the Garden of Genesis, which is a late game dungeon at 65 in Eden's Grove. And then we will start talking about the first connection off the map here. So if you see, most of these maps have like edges and they're all rounded, but some of them have like territory that looks like it extends right here, like you see, and then it fades off into the distance, and you can see a road there. So what does that mean? That means that potential future content probably going there, in my opinion. I know that over here in Ebonscale, sorry, when you go up this way, it does give you the indication for this being the Burning Sands, or I believe it was Burning Sands, and that was one of the thing that all the data miners were talking about, like, oh, the Burning Sands. But you can go there in game and it'll say like Burning Sands, but it'll kill you really quickly, so make sure you watch out for that one. But yeah, that'll be probably accessible by that region, so we'll discuss that a bit more. But it looks like there's a pathway that goes up here, right? So we would assume that something may connect to Morningdale at some point, so that would make it a very high target to control, because it's going to be one of your northernmost territories, so your closest territory, getting into some of this new content without having to use like a Hearthstone at Shattered Mountain. Shattered Mountain and Eden's Grove also have the same thing. You see the road kind of leads up here, and it seems to go into this northern undiscovered territory. Although these are not controllable, so we won't discuss that too much, but we're just going to assume that there's going to be future content coming up in this area. And same with Great Cleave. It is not controllable or obtainable. So again, this path over here to the west is just like, it's cool, but we can't do anything with it. So that's the mid zone territories, I would say. Now, high level territories, I think there's only two in the game, and that's going to be Ebonscale and also Reekwater down here. And there's a definite clear winner right now. So first, we'll just start with the second place, in my opinion, which is going to be Ebonscale. So it does have access to the Dynasty Shipyard, if you can see over here, level 55. This is going to be a dungeon that's kind of like your first dungeon before you go into a real in-game encounter. There are some decent legendary drops here, but nothing too shiny in particular, in my opinion at least, or at least there wasn't in the beta. So this zone seems to be about level 52 and above, 55, maybe going a bit higher than that. The other thing of note would be that, yes, like we mentioned before, it may connect to the Burning Sands in future content, so this might be a good place to obtain. I think the best thing about this town is just the aesthetic as well. It definitely looks really cool. It's very unique from all the other territories, so I'd recommend you going here to sort of check that out. Let's go over to the clear winner for late game. That's going to be Reekwater. It looks terrible, to be honest. It's like a swamp, much like Weaver's Fin. But this is probably going to be one of your prime in-game zones. And the reason for that is a lot of high-level farm spots, like this would be Virid Garodo, I believe, but it's not on the map at the moment because I didn't select the option, but I could. And then there's also some like elemental bear farms down here that are great, but more notably, there's a level 66 territory called the Siren Strand right here, this little zone that I'm zooming in on, and that entire area has high level elites. It also leads to the Siren Queen's arena, which is in this location right here, roughly. Yep, once it renders, yep, right there. So I believe it's all the way up at the top there, and that would be the Siren Queen's arena, and you would be able to only go up there through this giant winding path. You have to fight through all these elites. And I have a video on that. I'll actually release that later. It's pretty cool. And the other thing would be Lazarus Instrumentality. This is currently the best dungeon in the game that we were able to see. It's the highest level dungeon with the highest level loot that we've seen so far. There is also another arena called the Protector's Arena right next to it, and that's going to be in this zone right here. And that one was not available in the beta as the quest was bugged or something, and we were not able to get access to a tuning orb, and neither were the monster dropping any of the recipes or materials required for that. So a lot of in-game content in this territory, so keep that in mind. So with that being said, you have that breakdown of like beginning territories, mid-game territories, and late-game territories. So what does that mean for you? If you're in a guild, you're going to want to aim for some of those on priorities. If you're not in a guild, you may want to consider a faction that owns some of these territories that may be profitable for you. And also, just being in the faction will give you some of those bonuses. So again, going back to the updates here on the, what each territory does in terms of its special bonus, that's something to look out for. There's a small side note. If you do own a fort in a territory, you get 5% experience increase and 20% influence increase, which is also really good. So make sure that you keep an eye out for territories that your faction owns, and maybe that could help you level a little bit more slightly in that region. The final thing I do want to touch up on is house placement. So here is patch notes from also one of the alphas, and it's going to state that some of your travel times would be reduced based on the tier of the house or how expensive it was. I didn't get to test this fully in the beta. I just bought all the cheap houses and I didn't think about it, to be honest. So mine were all 4 hours, but I can confirm that cheap house, that first one, is 4 hours. Let me know if any of you guys have tested this fully and if you have found one of those really expensive houses to actually have the 2-hour cooldown, because if you do, then that's quite useful. But you are allowed 3 houses. So there is a leveling strat that I will go over that will cover where you want to place those houses for leveling primarily, but we'll get to that in a leveling guide video. But in general, like once you've leveled up, I think your best places to have a house would probably be either Everfall or Brightwood, Morningdale for sure, and then the third one has to be in Reekwater, in my opinion, because you're going to be going back here a lot. So Everfall or Windsward, your choice for the first house. For a mid-game house, I would either go with Brightwood or Morningdale, but probably lean towards Morningdale. And then if you have a final house, the third one, definitely Reekwater. So I hope this helped enlighten a little bit about some of the details of the territory and things of that nature. So I definitely appreciate everyone watching this video, and I'll be bringing you guys some more guides in the future just to kind of identify some of these things that I've discovered along the way, and I hope can just kind of help you on your journey in Eternum and make things just that much easier for you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.